Alrighty, well, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to another very exciting interview in the Future Proof Your Law Firm group. Today, I am very excited to have Nick Gurney here today from Gurney Law PLLC. Nick, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
How was your weekend? Did you have a good weekend?
It was good. It was good. Like I'm sure some of your viewers and many folks in the profession, I worked part of the weekend. I'm setting up a new office space, so that's been something to do on the weekends. And
Cool.
But it was good overall. How was yours?
It was good. It was good. Very rainy. I'm over in Michigan, and we are having a lot of rain. It's like predicted that we're going to get rain like for almost 2 weeks in a row. So it's been kind of crazy. There's been a lot of flooding recently, but we're pushing through it. So why don't we start by you giving us a little bit of background on who you are, what your law firm kind of specializes in, things like that.
Sure. So my name is Nick. I'm a product safety trial attorney. I specialize in product defect, truck crash and cases and trials. I started out practicing as a CLI, as a third-year law student graduating at a public defender's office, one of the best public defender's offices by reputation down in West Palm, the 15th Circuit, and got some trial experience there and kind of for a while had known that was something I wanted to be involved in, being in a courtroom and advocating in particular to a jury, and entered the civil sphere shortly thereafter when I graduated, and I've worked at in a couple of different areas of law in the civil plaintiff side. And then in March of this year, started my own firm as principal at Gurney Law, where we do those three areas and largely focused on, at least with products and trucking, cases where unfortunately folks are catastrophically injured, some situations they're killed. And we do investigations, we hire experts and investigators to go out and look into the causes of things. You see this, I know you're in Michigan, I'm in Orlando, very close to home. I grew up in West Palm Beach. We have the Sunrise building collapse, that condo collapse. And it's, tragedy doesn't cover it, but more and more information comes out every day. It's something that we monitor. And, that's the sort of one of the areas that we, try to help family members. I mean, for the people that they were able to pull out, those folks, but for the folks that, unfortunately, it was catastrophic for, we are, sometimes called upon to try to help those families and figure out what happened and how something like that can happen. I mean, that's the big question, right? You look at all the headlines, that's the question, how could this possibly happen? So that's kind of the high level overview. I'm also an adjunct professor of legal studies at the University of Central Florida. So I teach a number of courses in the legal studies department to undergraduates, legal writing, evidence, and I do a rhetoric in the law class every other fall or every fall, depending on the schedule. And that rhetoric in the law class really focuses on persuasion in the courtroom. In the field, how do we persuade? How do we make an argument? How do we support an argument? It's not about, using hypnosis or trickery. It's about what is the best way to communicate an idea, and how do we, before we do that, how do we make sure we're on all fours, the best footing we can possibly be on to persuade a judge, a jury, and if it gets to this point, an appellate court.
Sure. No, that's very interesting. Yeah, I don't think we've had any professors yet here today, and I know that's something you kind of wanted to cover. So, I'd love to talk a little bit more about that. How you think being first, why did you want to become a professor? And two, maybe how do you think that's helped you, at your law firm as well?
Yeah. So it wasn't for the pay. It's as an adjunct, I'm not a full-time professor over there, but it's absolutely for the service of the students. I actually went to UCF as an undergraduate, and they have a tremendous program. I'm blessed to be there, and I'm blessed to have graduated from that program. A lot of those students end up going to law school. A lot of them end up being public defenders, state attorneys, trial attorneys. They have a great trial team I competed on when I was an undergraduate. A big piece of that for me is giving back to the students, because I had great mentors and professors. The building I'm in was actually is owned by one of the professors that I had. She practices in criminal law, But I have space in her office, and I was able to, that was part of having that network and support system. I was an intern of hers, and then I was a legal assistant, and I went off to law school. And so I always had great mentors and leaders and people to show me the way. So I want to be able to do some of that. And I think that one big benefit to the students is I'm close in age, relatively speaking, compared to a lot of professors. And so we're able to share a bit of that commonality at this phase in life. But kind of selfishly for me, when I teach something, I learn it better than I could in any other setting, except perhaps in when you're briefing an issue, arguing it to the court, trying the case on that issue. They're very similar in terms of what we learn and retain. And so when I teach the students legal writing skills, research skills, evidence skills in applying the evidence code, a big piece of that for me is I'm learning as well. I'm remembering things. I'm identifying new issues that, I might be deep. It might be deep back in the brain, but it comes to the front.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And I've heard that a lot, when, sometimes teachers, learn more than the students do when they're in a particular setting. So no, that's very interesting. How did you go about getting that teaching gig? Is it just something you applied for, or because you went to school there?
It was not because I went to school there. It was on I have kind of a list of things. These are things that I really want to do in my career. They're important to me. I think that if I do them, the right way, it's gonna be a great benefit to others and to myself and my personal development. So I want to say it was probably through coaching the mock trial team there. As soon as I came back to Orlando to practice in 2017, after being in South Florida, I got to a place where I was settled in, and I got right back to coaching. And I've coached mock trial at the high school, college, and in part sort of at the law school level, and that's always been near and dear to my heart. It has given me great insight into the way that folks think about trial, and the way that juries think about the trial lawyers that are putting on the case, and also the skills necessary to be an excellent trial lawyer. And so coaching the team was a natural step. I did that, and I think being there and showing up and showing the dedication to the students probably had some role in that. But also, there's a process to get in to do things like teaching. And if anybody has questions, they can always email me, nick@gurney.law. I mean, I'm always happy to offer insight where I can. I'm certainly not, I don't make any of the decisions in terms of, that process, but it's been a tremendous experience. There are a lot of people I'll say you should teach. I mean, you can see it in people. There's a particular, and a lot of folks have it, I think, a particular way of addressing issues. And for me, it's been I'm better at communicating issues because I have to learn how to do it in real time in front of students who, they're paying tuition. They're paying for this education. It can't be, nothing can be done halfway. We have to, show up and do it right, and deliver the content in a way that is understandable, manageable. It makes sense. It's applicable. I bring a lot of real world application. I mean, my classes are full of, at least with rhetoric anyways, because that's a class that there's a direct correlation, but even with writing, I show them stuff that I and others have written. And sometimes it's others have written and it's even better than my work. It's, hey, look at this person, they're top of their field, but bringing in depositions, video, demonstrative aids, visualizations from courtroom, from trials in the courtroom, so that they can see the application of the concepts that we're covering. I think that's been a big deal.
Oh, sure. No, I definitely agree that I know probably one of the biggest things probably now with having COVID, students probably complained about teachers not being very involved in the classroom or whatever. They're just shooting video lectures or something real simple, but, and maybe not having a lot of classroom experience that's real life. So I bet that is super impactful for your students. And thank you for sharing all of that. And for anybody that, is interested in teaching, maybe reach out to Nick. That I think would be an awesome resource. So why don't we hop back into what's going on in the law firm right now? I'd love to talk about, as somebody that's a little bit more kind of niche down into something, a little bit specific. Why don't we talk about the process of how your firm has been growing? I know you recently talked about you were starting your firm. So, I know starting a firm must be intimidating, but how have you gone about that process? I know a big thing, that probably people think when they need to start a firm is, okay, how am I going to actually get these clients? So what was that process looking like for you?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. My process was sort of, I want to say I kind of divided it into two camps. The first being, how do I start the law firm and law firm management and law firm administration down the road? And the second piece was that client piece, because I've learned through experience, and I think most folks who manage a firm or manage lawyers would agree with this statement, that some lawyers are really good at running a firm, but not so good at the client retention management, getting new clients, generation. And then some lawyers are really good at that piece, getting clients, generating clients, retaining them, but not so much at the firm administration. And I think it's the rare lawyer who is good at both. And I recognize that in myself, that I have strengths and weaknesses. There are areas that I'm stronger in, and areas that I am developing. And my ability to work the case and do the litigation and do the trial and handle the component parts of a case, the types of cases that we handle, I feel very comfortable with that. It was the first road that was really foreign to me. And I'm a first generation college student. My parents are not lawyers. They're blue collar folks. And I didn't know a lawyer. In fact, I don't think I knew a lawyer until I was late in college working for a law firm. And so I didn't have any kind of insight into what it was like having a parent come home from running a firm or being a lawyer in general, and getting some of those sort of bits and pieces. From starting the firm, I relied heavily on others and resources. I'm big on resource management. If you could see the whole office, it's everything in triplicate. When I go to trial, everything has a redundancy, a backup. So I have a Wi-Fi hotspot and a second Wi-Fi hotspot. I have a projector and a second projector. I have, I'm happy to talk about the technology piece, because I know that that's part of, I watched some of the videos that you have, and they're wonderful. And a big part for me is adopting technology and adapting to technology. But for the firm administration, it was getting the resources, getting the materials, going to others and asking questions that are not apparent in the material. So Florida Bar has a phenomenal resource. I think it's startyourfloridafirm.com or org or something. Butchering it, but there's a site that they have run independent of the Florida Bar website that is a step-by-step process. And it's very basic, but it's extremely helpful. They did a wonderful job on that. So I used that as a starting point, and I relied on a lot of books by others. I have some of them here on my other bookshelf about starting your law firm, running a successful practice, the firm of your dreams. John Fisher, who's up in New York, is a phenomenal lawyer up there. He's very giving. He'll send copies. I think he mailed me a copy of the book. I told him you didn't need to, just send me an ebook, and he sent me a copy anyways, which was very sweet. But those sorts of resources really help, and taking the time, to understand what those are saying and what they mean, and then going to others who've done it and ask the right questions. And sometimes it's, what questions am I not asking? What are my blind spots? Can you help me with that? And it's hard because you're asking to kind of solve for a negative, right? But you don't want to encounter that when there's been an issue or a violation. So I learned, and thankfully I did it at the same time, but I learned I need a county and a city license for my business. So I assumed it was just the city and not the county, and they told me otherwise, and I got it and we're good. But there wasn't a playbook for that or a checklist for that. When it comes to clients, and I know this is kind of the second half, I get clients largely through other lawyers. One of our focuses, a focus of the firm is kind of twofold. One, on specific case types that are specialized enough that lawyers who have a different type of practice, although they may get a product case, they may not ordinarily handle them or frequently handle them. They're not in the law on that. So maybe they feel more comfortable sending it over to someone like us, a firm like ours. And we do co-counsel arrangements with folks who want to learn the law. And that's a lot of fun to me. And that's another area where teaching comes into play and helps, because I'm in a sense, teaching some of the substantive law and some of the issues and issue management to the referring attorney. We get a lot of cases, majority of our cases are through referring attorneys. Some are sort of organic and come our way through the internet and different things, but really our focus is on other firms who have cases. And if it's not a product case or a trucking case where we have those kind of specialized areas, another thing we do, a service that we offer, is trial support. I can first chair a trial, second chair a trial, or act just as trial support consulting. I started my firm in March. I'm young, so I'm relatively cheap. So it's like, come and get me while I'm inexpensive. But we can do any number of things helping a firm. I mean, just pick a jury day one and leave, or do the whole trial opening to closing, jury selection to closing. And that's a really unique opportunity, because usually we'll get those calls once mediation has impassed and trial appears imminent. We'll get those calls, and we kind of do I have kind of a rapid response team approach to that. And we work with firms to train their folks to be ready for trial as well. Like, it's not a selfish thing where I'm going to keep all the secrets. I'll go into firms and say, okay, who are your people that are working on these things? Let's identify the team members, their strengths. Let's play to those strengths. Here's the playbook. Here are the things you need. And then, a lot of the trial work in the courtroom in front of the jury, it's very individualistic, but the prep up to that point should be done by a team. And I've been very fortunate to work with firms that have wonderful team members already in place. And when it comes to trial, they might not even know it, but those people rise to the occasion. And that's one of my favorite aspects of the practice, is being able to design this sort of 3-pillar approach of products, trucking, trial, and do those sorts of cases with others or for others, as they whatever their preference might be.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very interesting, and I think that approach that you have is pretty unique, and I'm glad that it's working out for you so far. It sounds like a very impactful way to go, and I'm glad you're doing what you want to be doing, because I know sometimes people get stuck just chasing the money, thinking that that's what they have to do, and then they get unsatisfied with what they're doing. So one thing I want to talk about the technology for sure. I'm glad you brought that up. But something that you just mentioned that I think would be, impactful for people who are maybe struggling, is, again, in the very beginning, how do you build yourself to be someone where attorneys will refer out to you? Because I know that could be like, oh yeah, we get most of our clients from referrals from other attorneys. Well, if you've never had a case in a particular thing, or how did you get started with that and kind of grow that to fruition?
So it's a good question. And I'll start off first by saying I would never learn an area of law on another lawyer's case that they sent me. Meaning, if someone called me up tomorrow and said, hey, we have a medical malpractice case to litigate, to try, not to do intake and learn the process with them, because sometimes that happens. I'm learning, when they are, cases with from others as well. But if they called me and said, hey, do you want to take this case? I wouldn't do it alone. I think that's at a minimum a little bit, it's not being as upfront as I should be with them. If I were to say, yes, no problem, I got this under control. But I have taken cases for the first time, where it's a particular case type that's divisible enough that I say, okay, this is different enough from what I've done. I need someone else with me to guide me through it. And they understand that. And I explain that to them. Hey, this is the arrangement I'm looking for. And frankly, look, when we're talking about the practicality, the pragmatism of a lot of this, I'm cheaper in that situation. I'm taking less of a fee on a co-counsel arrangement because I'm learning that area of law. And once I've done it one or several times, then I feel comfortable. Once I feel comfortable doing it, and I think that's an area we have to be internally, honest with ourselves and internally consistent about whether we're prepared to handle that kind of case, because the stumbling blocks in cases are not always apparent. But that being said, I think I was very fortunate to be at firms where I was able to interact in the community. They allowed me to kind of grow in the community. Being involved in organizations helps a lot. I mean, and sometimes people, I think, miss the forest for the trees on this. If you get involved in leadership in a local bar association or local organization with other lawyers in particular, they don't necessarily have to see the quality of my legal work to know that I'm a hard worker, that I'm dedicated, that I show up on time, that I do what I say and I say what I do. I mean, those sorts of credos and things that we want to live our lives by, people see that and appreciate it. It resonates. And that's going to translate sometimes to an implicit trust where they'll extend it into their practice. Other times it's been, I've actually worked a case with somebody or for someone and gotten a really good result, and they can point to it and say, at least, we have proof that this person is not insane or, a fraud, right? Like they've seen it and they can put their finger on and show that line item where, and sometimes, for example, with trials or even with cases that will take over in litigation, pre-suit, or even, post-mediation, we've had arrangements, and I've worked on cases where, especially at trial, we'll say, look, what's the last best written offer? Whatever the last best written offer is, I won't take a fee on that portion of it, because that's sort of the established value to date, even though we think there's more value here and the other side's not acknowledging it. And that's a bet on myself. I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and say, unless I grow the value of this case, and when I say that, I mean, come in and have the other side recognize through my work that there is greater value here, greater risk to their insured or their insurer, if the case may be. Unless I do that, I'm not a valuable asset. I'm not a value add to this equation, and I shouldn't be paid for that non-existent. So I think people need to be prepared if this is a practice sort of system or setup that they're interested in. They have to be prepared to bet on themselves, to do the work, to show up, to not overload themselves. I have a relatively small caseload so that I can do some of these things. So I can do cases around the country, product cases that are relatively complex compared to some other civil personal injury or wrongful death work. I can't be saddled with 150, 200, 300 files unless the team grows. And that's, I know that that's part of the show is talking about growth. And one of the questions you had asked me about is kind of where I'm at, right? Mm-hmm. I'm in the, let's make sure we're stabilized. Let's make sure our foundation is sound phase first. I'm not afraid of growth, but I've seen folks who I think grow quickly. And that could, for me, that makes me nervous if I grow too quickly and I don't have the foundation set where I need it to be. I hope that kind of answers your question.
No, hey, and Nick, you have been dropping a lot of value. That is, I think that was, I bet people are going to, I hope they at least listen to this multiple times, because I think that was very valuable for sure. And I know, this interview is getting a little long. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I have two more questions that I think would be really important. One, I know you talked a little bit before that you're kind of big on using some certain technologies. Why don't you briefly cover maybe some of the most important ones that you're using in your firm?
Yeah, so so between software and hardware, software, I think firms have to be headed in the direction. You don't have to do it right now today, but yeah, I think you have to be headed in the direction of cloud-based, wireless, remote capabilities. Even if you're in a physical office still, or you've come back to a physical office, I think that COVID was a lesson, or should have been a siren call to a lot of folks that, look, whether it's a resurgence or a different virus or just a change in culture, we have to be prepared to not only be able to work remote. It's not just handing your team a laptop, by the way. It's also saying, how am I going to yourself? How am I going to manage these folks? How am I going to ensure that not just that they're doing the work, right? Some people have software where they can monitor keystrokes or logins or whatever. It's not just that. It's how do I give them the resources and tools to be good, to excel at their job? And that is, how am I setting up these folks for success through going to remote, conferences, webinars? Are we still scheduling those things? Because you'll inevitably, as a law firm owner, manager, managing partner, whatever the case may be, you're going to have people that come to you and say, I want to go to this conference, but not everyone's going to do that. And not everyone is going to know about that. They're not going to know about every book that's out there on, excellence for paralegals and advanced certificates, things that are really going to help them grow. And so I think there has to be a system in place for that. That's the software piece. And it's a remote desktop, it's Zoom, it's file share, remote file share system, going paperless because there may not be someone in the office to scan, and having a system for that, having outsourced to reasonably priced companies like companies that handle mailings, companies that handle shredding, things like that. So you have these component parts, pieces that work together. I have voice over protocol phone. It rings to my desktop. It rings to my assistant's desktop. I have it go to my cell phone. I don't have it go to theirs, but after hours, if you call my main line, it goes to my cell phone. Night, weekend, holiday, it doesn't matter. So I think that's the software piece. The hardware piece, it's the physical units. It's having backups, because when you go remote, the fear that people have is, well, what if it crashes or my files get deleted or something? So I have a network area storage system set up that creates a closed network that is continuously backing up systems and files. Look, and I'm not a tech genius or even really all that tech savvy, but I figured it out. I did it myself. It's got bays. You can trade out hard drives. You can go up to 64 gigs on this one. There's larger ones. You can go up to terabytes. I mean, there's a lot of options out there. Asking your IT guy, asking your nephew, whatever as the case may be, asking me, there's these options, and then having redundancies in place for the software. For trial, I use a lot of hardware in trial. I create a network in the courtroom. I use Apple TV as one that creates a network where everyone can link their Apple devices on our team to be able to put things up on the projector. I have a projector that's the size of a soda can. We put that up there. It's got a 360 speaker. We run things through HDMI, so they're corded. We tape down the cords to the floor so no one trips. But we essentially, in a sense, take over the courtroom with the technology that we need to put on our case, and we have every option. And the fail-safe is paper charts, whiteboards, things on easels, but we have a projector screen, a dot cam for physical paper documents, and it's having those different systems and thinking through. And if you couldn't tell already, like I'm a bit of a worrier, right? So okay. Thinking, what is the worst possible thing that could happen, and how do I prepare for it? Not prevent it, but how do I prepare for it so that it doesn't go nuclear?
Yeah, no, I think what you said, talking about backups, I think it's very important, because you could have all the cool latest technology in the world and be fully virtual, but like you said, if something does happen, and that is a big fear, if there's a data breach, or if just something happens with your computer, maybe something happens, you spill water on your laptop, and then it's gone for a couple of days, and you're like, oh geez, where's all my all my files were just on my desktop. So that's very important for sure. And I think moving forward, as firms become more and more involved in the digital age, it's going to be important to have better security and having those backups for sure. So I'm glad you guys are already taking that into account. That's fantastic. So my last question for you here today, Nick, is, and I really appreciate all the value that you've been sharing today. What is one final thing you would share to somebody who is maybe either just struggling to future-proof their firm, or they're just struggling in general, somebody who's new to starting their own law firm? What is one thing you could share to them to maybe see, hey, there's a light at the end of the tunnel as long as you keep doing this?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it really depends on what their struggle is, because everyone's struggle is different. Some struggles can't be solved with software solutions or IT or better, fiber, optic internet. It depends on what the problem is, but I think, you have to communicate it to somebody you trust. And one thing I do is I've focused on the firm culture. That's been the biggest, one of the reasons why I didn't go on a hiring spree starting out is, well, and for a lot of reasons, I value firm culture above a lot of things, including, immediate direct revenue. It's more important to me that I have empathetic, caring, loving, hardworking staff members than someone who has done it all, seen it all, or who can bang out the best motion memo, whatever the case may be, but who is not going to empathize with the client, or at least sympathize with the client. That is much more important to me. Love the clients first. And I think that if someone is struggling with any aspect of their practice that they own, sometimes it helps to examine firm culture and to listen to the complaints, as difficult as they are to hear. Listen to the complaints of staff and attorneys and try to understand whether that is a personality conflict or a systemic issue. A lot of times it's a systemic issue, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not incumbent on staff members, and even to an extent not as incumbent on your lawyers, if you have lawyers working for you, to identify the systemic issue and propose a solution. As the owner of the firm, as the person who is making the revenue, who has the equity, it is our job to solve that problem, to identify that issue and solve that problem and be proactive about it, and not wait until it reaches a critical mass. For the folks who are not running a firm, managing a firm, who have any inclination or interest in doing that, before I started mine this March, I asked a lot of people, with COVID, is this the best time or the worst time ever to start a law firm? Because I'm convinced it's one of the two, right? And it was people who had been in practice, owning a firm, managing a firm for a couple of years. And then one person who had started a firm like 7 days before COVID first lockdown started. So like running the gamut, right? And a lot of folks told me, look, it's probably a little bit of both, but there's a lot of good, because right now I can handle 5-10 cases in Miami, and I'm not making the 6-hour drive with traffic and, for a 5-minute, 8:30 hearing. Not that I don't, mind doing that. I love doing that. But the efficiency quotient has shot through the roof. And so if people are thinking about starting a firm, consider whether this might be the best possible time to do it because of the adoption of technology, the seamless transition. A lot of courts have been, I've been extremely impressed with the courts and how they've adopted technology, worked it in, and been flexible, frankly. We don't give lawyers, I don't think, give enough credit sometimes for that. The clerk's offices, the court administration, the judges themselves, the JAs, they've all been incredibly easy to work with and accommodating in this, very strange, uncertain time. And their caseloads are ballooning in a lot of cases. So to do that under that stress is amazing to me. If someone's considering going out on their own, understand those benefits. And as technology gets, better and more ubiquitous, and things become sort of decentralized, there are a lot of ways to run a firm with, in a sense, a laptop and an internet connection. Obviously there's more, but consider the alternative. And you mentioned it earlier. One thing is you do have to be prepared going in and doing that research and having, some savings lined up to do some of that. But the opportunity is there, undoubtedly.
Oh, no, it definitely is, for sure. And everybody who's been on the show so far has been offering great value to anybody that's looking to maybe get started. So I'm hoping that that'll continue. And I really appreciate your time today, Nick. If anybody wants to learn more about you or your firm, where could they go to find more about you?
Yeah, so our website is probably the primary source right now. It is under construction to go to our sort of full site, which should be up hopefully this month or next. But it's gurney.law. LAW is the domain. No, it's not .com. So gurney.law. They can email me, nick@gurney.law, nick@gurney.law. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, a lot of social media. We do a lot of social media outreach, and I try with some advocacy efforts, working with different organizations and groups to try to ensure that, for example, products, one recently you can see on our LinkedIn page and on Instagram and Twitter, we're tweeting at Fisher Price and Mattel, asking, I think, questions that are fair public safety questions for them to answer about why these products are being recalled when they're being recalled. The Rock and Play, and now the more recent recall, some of the soothers. There are documented cases of babies passing away. And those are questions that should be, it shouldn't be some lawyer in Orlando asking these questions, but I'm happy to do it. So following us on social media, I think gives people kind of a fuller picture of the work that we do.
Definitely. No, definitely. Everybody check you guys out. That sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you again, Nick, for being here. Really appreciate it. And we will see you all in the next one. Have a great day. Bye-bye.